Mark Harmon, former county commissioner, Tennessee Democratic Party executive committee member, and we're continuing our sort of series of shows about the election, 2018 election. And so who better to talk to than Mary Mancini?
Hi,
Mary
Mark.
is here.
How are you?
She's Democrat.
What do I call you? Commissioner, committee man?
Mark.
Mark.
Anyhow, and you're chair of the Tennessee Democratic Party and have been for almost 4 years now, right?
It'll be 4 years in January.
Yeah. And are seeking re-election, I think.
I am seeking re-election, yes.
Good.
For
All
another
right.
two years, yeah.
And as I'm one of 72 of your bosses. 'Cause I'm
Yes, you are. So
Technically.
you actually have a vote.
Yes,
so,
I do on that.
Yes.
so speaking
awkward.
of voting.
No, just kidding.
So, well, when you're sitting around with Democrats or even with just friends at a casual gathering, what would you say is the overall takeaway from the 2018 election, especially here in Tennessee?
That Tennessee Democrats are on the move.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there was a lot of infrastructure work that has been built up over the last 4 years that where we saw the fruits of our labor. And when you combine that with two good top-of-the-ticket candidates, what we see is that there are a lot more Democrats in the state of Tennessee that have been activated to get involved, run for office, and vote than in 2016 or 2014.
Okay, which is great news.
It actually is really good news. And so I think that's the big takeaway, is that we are moving in the right direction. And all data actually points to that in terms of voters and Democratic voters and increase in Democratic voter turnout in the primary, et cetera, et cetera.
So even in districts and in counties where Democrats did not necessarily win offices, the percentage is up.
That's correct. The percentage
Almost universally.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just one indication. Another indication is just the sheer number of candidates who have stepped up to run for office at the state level, right? And congressional level.
Right.
So we had more candidates step up to run for State House and State Senate and for Congress than we have had in about 20 years.
Just about filled the ballot here in Knox County.
Just about.
Yeah, and many other places around the state as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you can't win if you don't play the game. We've got candidates out there.
Right. We have to flood the field, right, and actually have candidates show up, and that's half the battle.
And of course, another thing is we can say for the first time, and I guess it's 22 years, something like that, there will be more Democrats in the state legislature than after the election than before.
Yeah, so that's the first time in 22 years. We gained one seat in the House, plus 26 seats now. So yes, it's the first time in 22 years that we have more Democrats in the state legislature the day after the election than the day before the election. And one of them comes from right here.
Right here, Gloria Johnson.
Congratulations, Gloria.
Yes.
Woo-hoo.
2,450 vote overwhelming win in the 13th district, which was carved out by the Republicans to be about a +6 Republican district. It didn't matter. She's a great campaigner and a fantastic candidate and great legislator, not to mention.
Absolutely. That's first and foremost. She's a great legislator.
Yeah.
And it's great. It's going to be great to have her back up on the Hill.
It will certainly be. We congratulate her. So she has gained, I think did we gain a seat in Nashville?
Yeah, so that's the other exciting news is that we flipped the seat that was formerly held by Speaker Beth Harwell in Davidson County. And so Bob Freeman won that seat. And then we held on to the seat in Clarksville. That was Joe Pitts, who is now the mayor of Clarksville, retired from that seat, and we held on to that seat.
And we lost one in, was it Ripley or somewhere?
We lost one. We lost Craig Fitzhugh's seat, in Ripley. He retired to run for governor. Not didn't retire. He changed his focus to run for governor. And so that seat was open, and we did not prevail in that seat.
Doing the math, +1.
+1, that's it, yeah.
So let's talk about it on another level. Let's talk about what is left to be done. Now that we have this platform of turning things around, improving numbers almost across the state, and a good election cycle for Democrats not only here but across the country, what is left to be done? Where do we go next?
So the operative word is organize, organize, organize. Right? It's 3 words actually. It's one word said 3 times.
Right.
Because that's what's gotten to us to this. That's what has gotten us to this point. Right? Is is grassroots organizing on the ground, making sure that all these people that are being activated by the presidency of Donald Trump and the fact that he's taking this country in a direction that that is not us, it is not who we are. And so people are becoming more and more active. And so how do we organize them to reach our goal, which is to elect more Democrats in Tennessee? And that doesn't just mean at the statewide level or at the congressional level or at the state level. It also means building a bench. So it means doing that at the city level and the county level as well. Right. So it's organizing, right? So continuing to organize to train our candidates to run better campaigns, to train our operatives well, first of all, to get them to stay in Tennessee and then train them further. And a lot of folks got great experience running campaigns this election cycle. And then also, with our grassroots Democrats, how to build our county parties, that's very important. How to do outreach to other organizations that are doing good work, right? And that ultimately we share values with. So all of that, that organize is very important for 2019. The other thing I will say to that is we can no longer look at any year as an off year, right? I think traditionally, if there isn't a national election, whether it's a midterm or presidential election, people look on that year as being an off year. Well, there are no more off years. 2019 is not an off year. And I think just changing that shift in the way we think about things will be really helpful with organizing.
Now, by saying it's not an off year, do you mean you're organizing? Do you also referencing municipal elections to go on?
Well, they go hand in hand, right? So the organizing is important to recruit candidates to run at the municipal level, to get the volunteers that they need to be successful, to continue to do that direct voter contact. But let's face it. I mean, let's be realistic. The Democratic Party in Tennessee also needs ambassadors all the time to go speak to voters about who we really are, right? So instead of allowing, and we've made great strides in this, but Republicans get to define themselves. And they don't get to define who we are. They have been defining who we are, but they don't get to do that.
Can't let them do that.
We can't let them do that. And so we've, again, made great strides towards that, but we need to continue to move that needle. So that's where the organize comes in. So it's speaking to our values, going out there and meeting voters. It's also the municipal elections where we need to run Democratic candidates.
What astounded me this past cycle was all of these people. I mean, we saw record numbers of minorities, record numbers of women, record numbers of teachers, record numbers of scientists. All running, and many of them,
I wonder why.
Many of them, the anti-science of the current administration, but all of them running. And most of them, running as Democrats. As I said to a few people this week, I said, wow, Democrats elected a bunch of experienced people and scientists, and the Republicans elected 2 indicted congressmen and a dead pimp. If you follow that race in Nevada.
I know what you're talking about. That's hilarious, though.
I mean, that building is so important because 2019. I'm not putting it away, but 2020 is even more important because presidential year, nearly everything's on the ballot, and census.
Absolutely, redistricting is on the horizon as well, and it really literally goes all hand in hand, right? We've built every 2 years on the previous 2 years, and so we need to continue to do that. But we have to break it down into manageable chunks, right? And so that's where 2019 comes in as added to the infrastructure to build on for 2020.
And then when we think about that, we also have to think about the gerrymandering that goes with redistricting, and how that distorts results. I mean,
it does, and I think at the national level, there's organizations that are really sort of sounding the alarm on the redistricting process. But let's look at the state of Tennessee and where we are at our state legislature. There's about 40 to 45% of the voters here in Tennessee are actually Democrats or Democratic-leaning voters, right?
Do you hear that, mass media? 40 to 45% really Democrats.
Right. But why is it that we only have 30% of the seats in the state legislature? Gerrymandering.
Right.
It's the idea of taking let me take a step back. So in Tennessee, it's to the victor goes the spoils, right? So whoever controls the state legislature gets to actually put forth a map of the districts for Congress and for State House and for State Senate. And because they have the votes, they get to vote on the map. And so they get what they want pretty much, right? So what they did 10 years ago, Republicans took control of the state legislature. And what they did is they redistricted a lot of Democrats, combined two Democratic districts into one, so that two sitting legislators had to battle it out. And they did that all over the state. In Davidson County, we had 3 state Senate seats that were primarily, it's Davidson County, primarily leaned Democratic, and we had 3 Democrats who held those seats. Well, they took those 3 seats and they stuck all of the Democrats in 2 of them, and all of the Republican or more independent-minded voters, and put it in that 3rd one, and then promptly took that one back. So that is the face of redistricting. And so again, we have 40%, say roughly, of Democratic voters in Tennessee, but we only have 30% of the state legislature. There's something inherently wrong with that. There are other ways to do redistricting. There are redistricting committees, nonpartisan redistricting committees that could be put together. Other states have done this.
Yes, other states and locations have done this. They've used retired panels of judges, demographers.
Yeah, and what it really does is it takes away a choice for the voter, right? The choice becomes either the Democrat or Republican primary. I mean, let's look at Davidson County, right? I ran in one of those Senate districts in 2014 against Jeff Yarbrough in the primary. Basically, whoever won that primary was going to win the general election. So Republicans didn't have a voice in that election, right? That is unfair. It should be as even as possible so that Democrats and Republicans can actually have discussions about the issues, not about the most left-leaning or right-leaning talking points.
Same as Knox County. Let's take that example.
Okay.
Senate District 7 starts at Farragut, runs all the way to the zoo.
Right.
And it's this long, elongated, winding with Senate District 6 wrapping around it in an unusual manner. And you think, my goodness, why, with such a normal boundary, like maybe the city limits?
Normal boundaries,
important.
important.
You could have, and if you had the city of Knoxville as its own state Senate district, and the outlying suburbs as a district, you might get a Democrat in one of those districts. If we had a good candidate, you might get a Democrat in 2 of those districts. Right. And so, and you got to, well, they're not.
And that's the thing. That redistricting is by design. Republicans did it that way so they could have a stranglehold on those 2 seats. Yeah. So something needs to change in the state. I think voters need to be aware that this is happening, and the impetus for change has to come from outside of the 2 parties, right? It has to come from people being mad about not having a real choice.
And speaking of excess partisanship, there is this plan that the Tennessee legislators are kicking about for registration by party.
Yeah.
So you could not, in the primary, switch to a different party to express a preference.
Yeah.
I know the outgoing governor, the incoming governor, both have expressed reservations. I want to get your reaction to this idea.
I don't like it at all. I think independent voters should have as much of a right to vote in primary elections than anyone else does. And what this would say, if you don't want to register with either party, then you can't vote in a primary election. And I find that inherently small d democratic.
Yeah, I had the same reaction. That it's an assault on the independence of voters. It's an assault on the ability to vote and exercise a meaningful choice in many places.
That's right. And so again, it's the Republicans trying to stop voters from actually having a choice that matters to them.
And what is even more repugnant and undemocratic, small d undemocratic, take, for example, what's going on in Wisconsin right now. A lame duck session jamming through a whole bunch of stuff to get Scott Walker to sign it before he goes back into the deep dark shadows where he belongs. And I think one of the things was they said that no area may do more than 2 weeks of early voting.
Yeah.
Why disenfranchise people?
Exactly. There's only one reason.
Republicans benefit from a smaller voting base.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what they sometimes will admit to sometimes.
Well, they also, it's not just that, but they target Democratic voters, populations that normally vote Democratic.
Right.
That is so let's talk about early voting,
Sure.
right? The idea is to make it more convenient for everyone, right? But in some counties, they have stopped early voting on a weeknight at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Not great for working people.
Thank you. Right. So there's only one reason why that's done. Why, when early voting started, everything was open like 7 to 7, right? Just like a regular election day, or 9 to 6, or something. But there's only one reason why they are stopping voting on a weekday at 3 o'clock. Early voting on a weekday at 3 o'clock, and it's because working people who want to work afterwards.
Right.
And so there's a lot of shenanigans in this state about voting. So.
Well, let's turn to a few bright side things.
All right.
We talked about Gloria Johnson.
Yes.
And you're familiar with a lot of the candidates who ran. So who are some of your breakout stars who did better than expected and you want to see more out of?
All of them.
Well, you're the party chair. You have to say that.
But it's really true, right? I mean, and I'll answer your question more specifically, but part of my job is to, after the election, is to call all the candidates after the election. And, we didn't win any of our statewide races, and we had a few bright spots in this was before we got some of the voter data back, so the day before the election. We one net seat gain in the state legislature. We saw turnout just explode. Early voting turnout for Democrats just exploded, right? I mean, there was a lot of bright spots, but I didn't know what to expect from the candidates when I called them, right? So, but after the full 2 or 3 days of calling, I started to feel better, because that whole idea
they made you feel better.
Not that was their job, but they were so still fired up, almost to a one of them, still fired up. They understood that, where it took Republicans 30 years to get where they are today, it's going to take us, again, talking about rebuilding on that infrastructure that's built every 2 cycles, or continuing to build. So cycle after cycle after cycle, we're getting better. It's going to take all the energy. It's going to take running again for many of them. It's.
Okay, I'm going to nominate some people.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
go ahead.
here are some of my breakout stars.
Can
Sure.
we say, let's start from Congress and then do 1, 2, 3, say your name. Say
Congress?
the name. Yeah, okay.
Congressional candidates?
1, 2, 3.
Renee Hoyos.
Yay!
Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic candidate.
Fantastic candidate.
The Democratic numbers were up in that district, and she worked it hard.
Oh my God, such a good candidate.
Yeah, great candidate. I hope she continues to be active and seek things. She ran a positive, incredible campaign. That district has not elected a Democrat, maybe ever. The last non-Republican was a Whig.
It's a tough district.
Yeah, but she was a breakout.
She's absolutely a breakout. And again, the district is tough. The area of the state is tough in terms of how many Republicans are in the district. Renee, I don't know what's next on her plan, but she's a good candidate for so many reasons. But partly, I think it's because of her authenticity. Right. She has that. When she's speaking, she is telling you how she really feels, and she shares our values, and she's a great candidate.
Another person fits those same characteristics, Jamie Ballinger.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, ran for the state Senate in District 7, did better than almost anyone expected. And just a bubbling with enthusiasm, honest, authentic person. I hope she runs for something else.
Yeah.
She's a former student of mine, too.
Oh, is she? Okay.
And,
good job, Mark.
Well, thank you. I can't take credit for her. Maybe her family can. She's fantastic. But the thing about her is that, I mean, she's running against Richard Briggs, who's not a moderate, but he plays one on TV. And, I mean, yeah, he was technically for Medicaid expansion, good, didn't push it well enough.
No.
And he was one of the authors and sponsors of that horrific bill about Confederate monuments, where he denied cities the right to make their own choices. So you have to wonder about his future if she can challenge him like that.
Sure, and so we have another candidate or another Republican state senator like Dr. Briggs, Dr. Steve Dickerson, another doctor, and The issue with these Republicans that some of our folks go, well, they're good, good people, they're moderates, they were for this or for that. Here's the problem with that. They could tell you in a district that's closer than, like a 70 Republican, 30 Democratic district, if it's a little closer than that, they can go to a Democrat and they can say, you know what, I'm actually for that, right? But there's nothing I can do because the people in my caucus, blah, 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 blah. Right. Here's what they don't do. They don't spend political capital on pushing the members of their caucus. And I think we need to absolutely keep that in mind because Dr. Briggs, Jamie Ballinger, would actually be pushing loudly Medicaid expansion. Anybody who runs against Steve Dickerson in 2020 that's a Democrat will be absolutely saying, I am pushing, I want to expand Medicaid. So we have to be careful as Democrats that we don't accept that he's a nice guy, he's told us he's for X issue. Unless they're spending political capital to actually make it happen, we need to have a Democrat in that seat.
And a Democrat winning that upset seat would cause a lot of people to say, maybe we should do something about Medicaid because, they're not going to move with the expected results.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, I'll throw out one more, Greg McKay.
Greg McKay, another incredibly, great candidate with a tough, a tough loss. So close. And let me just recognize a couple on the other end of the state as well.
Sure.
So
I don't know if our viewers will know them, but please tell me about.
Gabby Salinas, who ran for state senate in against Brian Kelsey in Memphis, in Shelby County.
There's a guy who deserved to be defeated.
Right, and again, she worked so hard and came so close. Andrew Bon Johnson, who ran to replace Craig Fitzhugh in that seat. Just an incredible candidate. I mean, we have amazing candidates all over the state. And Rebecca Purrington in Williamson County, also an amazing state house candidate. Jennifer Vinoy. I mean, here's the problem when I get into naming them. I'm going to not name them all. You're all really fantastic.
Everyone else, we want to assure you,
seriously,
she loves you too.
Well, but again, and I'm not just saying that. You guys did really represent the Democratic Party well, and you work so hard. And I just want to say thank you. So.
Well, now, reflecting on the election, you do so much. Everyone does so much. You're working really hard. And there are all sorts of lessons to be learned, and you're going around the state making sure that we've learned them all.
Yes.
But are there any funny stories? Anything that sticks with you as like, oh my gosh, I got to tell people about that. That was just hilarious and odd and funky.
Oh, wow, that's such a great question. My dreams are really weird at night.
Really?
But I mean, just, when you fall into bed exhausted and you take melatonin to fall asleep, apparently it really causes weird dreams.
Weird dreams?
No, nothing that really that I could think of that stood out like as a funny.
At the opposite end of the spectrum, let's talk about a nightmare.
Oh.
North Carolina 9.
Oh yeah.
That congressional race where there was such blatant cheating.
Yeah.
And Republicans would love to talk about vote fraud. Well, they committed someone there committed election fraud.
Right. Thank you. There is a difference.
There is a difference,
between those two, and I think a lot of people don't understand that difference.
Yeah.
So let's name it, right?
Yeah.
Voter fraud is if you, Mark Harmon, wake up one day and you go to vote, and then you decide, you know what, I'm gonna vote in my dead neighbor's name. Like I'm gonna go in their house, take their card, or pretend I'm them, right? So that's voter fraud.
And there have been studies that show that is less common than being struck by lightning.
Yes, it's really less common. What does happen more often is election fraud.
Right.
And we have had several instances here in the state of Tennessee with actual election fraud where, whether it's a poll worker that, this happened in Memphis, three poll workers went to jail actually many years ago, not that many years ago now, but they were actually voting in dead people's names, right? It's the poll workers, it's the people that actually control the elections, and that's what's happening in North Carolina.
Right.
So it's election fraud,
Right.
not voter fraud.
Yeah, and that therefore it should not be perverted to make voting more difficult or other such thing, which is I'm worried will happen next.
It's already happening though. It's why we have the voter ID law, right? It's why we have the photo ID to vote law.
Okay.
So
Let's end on sort of an upbeat list of things to do.
and
Well, we're only 3 minutes away from the end here, so let's.
Gosh, that was so
Didn't
quick.
it go quickly?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
It's easy to converse about these things.
It is.
What steps and what things are necessary to make Tennessee purple in the classic red-blue designation? What things do you have on your plate to make this state at least purple?
Okay, so the same things that we have had on our plate, right?
Right.
It's the goal of the Tennessee Democratic Party is to elect Democrats.
Right.
So that's informs our strategy, that informs our organizing. So continuing to build our bench with and that's county, and our county party is already doing that. Like we have people elected in for county commission and for city council, a Democrat elected for the first time in forever, right? Or in Blount County, the first African American woman who was elected to that level, to a county commission. So continuing to build the bench that way, continuing to recruit excellent candidates for all of our up and down the ballot for all of our elections, to continuing to help our county parties, which are our organizing arm, to continue to do that work of organize, and to help them be successful on the ground doing direct voter contact. Right. And then outreach is another really important one, right? So we're doing this debrief tour, and I get a lot of, well, what are you going to do, or what are we going to do to actually make this room look a lot more diverse, or make this room look a lot more like the rest of the country does, right? And the answer is outreach. But you can't, and I can't, sit in our offices and wait for other people to come to the county party meeting, right? The county party has to have people that are willing to go out and meet people where they are, whatever organization, whether it's the NAACP or if it's a youth organization, an LGBTQ organization for young people, it's getting involved in the women's marches, it's getting involved in Pride, it's getting involved in all of these, in Labor Day parades, like just outreach is the number one thing. And we have been doing it. We have been doing all of those things, and we need to continue doing all of those things and building on the infrastructure that was laid in this election cycle. So
make sure when someone interacts with something or some organization that represents democratic interests, labor, teachers, et cetera.
Yeah, teachers, labor. Yeah.
And then recruiting good candidates, supporting them with an organized campaign, keeping good records so we have volunteers for the next campaign.
Yes.
All of that's part of the strategy.
Yeah.
And that is a pretty good note on which to end.
Excellent. Well,
so,
thank you, Mark.
Mary Mancini, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And this time it was on camera.
Yes.
And it was for DTV, Democratic Television.
Yes.
Television for Democrats, by Democrats, but for everybody, really, because our party is growing, the base is growing, we're becoming the big tent.
Yes.
People are fleeing the Republicans now represent if they continue to be the Trumpian party. So we're just looking forward to great days ahead.
Yeah.
And we want to thank everyone who ran and everybody who supported, and we want to thank those who will do in the future. I'm Mark Harmon. This has been DTV. Please join us again next Friday night for more intriguing conversations.